What's going on, guys? I'm DB, also known as the official Wildman Reese. Ever since I was little, I've had an affinity for wildlife, nature, and the outdoors. So why don't y'all come with me as I share a little bit of my life with y'all and we go on this journey together. Come with me. Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. This little lady in front of us, her name is Tookie. She is a Russian tortoise. They also have other names like the Horsfield's tortoise, the Central Asian tortoise, the steppe tortoise, and the Afghan tortoise. They inhabit areas like China, Afghanistan, Iran, and Pakistan. Now, I got her from my brother back in March of 2024, and they actually bought her from a PetSmart when they lived in California back in January of 2016. Now, I do want to give a huge shout out to my niece and my two nephews, Bryn, Bronson, and Braden. Thank you guys so much for entrusting me with your beloved tortoise and allowing me to have her and take care of her. It means a great deal to me, so thank you very much. Now, you're probably wondering why I'm talking over when you can see that I actually recorded this video. It's because I didn't have a microphone back then, and it was very windy this day, so the audio is terrible. Now, Tookie is currently chowing down on some dandelion greens and some dandelion green flowers, which they can eat, but let's get into building her temporary enclosure. Okay, and what I'm showing here is these two ZooMed tortoise houses we got off Marketplace. Typically, one of these things costs you about $100, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. I got these from a guy off Marketplace, and he sold them both to me for a total of $100. And then what I'm pointing out is these two screws in the end of these 2x4s on each end of the enclosure that we've added so that it's one long enclosure. That way it's more stable and it will hold the weight, as well as the screws we added in here on the side, which is kind of what I'm showing. And then I'm also showing how the wood sticks up over the bottom part of the enclosure itself and how it's going to raise it up off the ground a little bit so the tortoise houses aren't sitting on the ground themselves. That way it'll keep the tortoise house from rotting a lot less quickly because it'll actually be the 2x4s that are sitting on the ground instead of the tortoise house itself. So this will last us a lot longer than if we were to set that on the ground itself. This should be able to handle the weight we're going to put in it and all the flowers and everything we're about to do. And I'm showing you these pieces because they go with the next clip, which I'm going to explain. But this front one has the hole in it, and then the rest are just solid pieces. Okay, so what I'm explaining now is much like a minute ago. Now that these are sitting right side up, I'm just explaining that these are two enclosures and not just one. And the side that's closed, I've got it closed on purpose to show the size of one tortoise house. Here in a second, we're going to open that, and the pieces I showed in the clip before this, I'm about to show how they slide into place inside of this enclosure. So now that this is open, you can see the little grooves in this wood. I'm showing now on this first one is where the solid piece goes to enclose this into one enclosure. And the second piece slides in right there, which encloses that. And that's why it's got the little door in it so that they can get in and out of the elements, whether it's hot, cold, raining, whatever. And then here I'm showing that I've put that piece on it to hold it together from the inside to help support the weight from when we put the dirt and plants or whatever we're putting in here. That way Tookie has a bigger enclosure. Okay, and not to change the subject or get off topic, but I'm sure you're wondering what all those black totes are. Well, we used that for our garden last year, and I cleaned them out in fall, and I'm lazy, so I never put them up. So right now I'm using a couple of them to prop open our enclosure, and I'm currently staining our enclosure to weatherproof it so it will last longer. And so I'm staining it, giving it a break, staining it, giving it a break, and then we close it and do the outside, and then we go ahead and grab a paintbrush and smooth it out so it's not all clumpy once it dries. Okay, and here what I'm explaining is now that we've got this stain, it's been sitting out here a couple of days drying, so everything should be locked in and good to go. And so now what I'm telling you is that we're going to start putting our stuff in this enclosure. So the first thing we're going to do is layer this with rocks for our drainage system on bottom, and then we're going to put black weed stop on top of that to separate our rocks from the dirt that we will then put on top of the black weed stop. Now you could probably just put the dirt on the rocks and it would work the same, but I'm going to use the black weed stop in between to keep the dirt from getting into the rocks. So that way our drainage system will work very well and it will keep everything separated. And I believe it would probably be better for the plants too. Okay, and so now you can see we're adding our thin layer of rocks for our drainage system. And now you can see we're stretching out that black weed stop over top, measuring out exactly how much we need. And then once we get it cut down to size here, I go get a staple gun so I could staple this to the side and staple it into the wood. That way, once we add our dirt on top and Tookie starts digging in it, if she digs down to the black weed stop, it doesn't just move real easy. And then here I'm laying down this dirt, or this bag of dirt, to show you that it's Texas native and it's locally sourced. It's also organic, which is a huge positive because we don't want a bunch of fertilizers and pesticides in our dirt because it's just not good for our animals. And so we open this up. As you can see, we've got our girls standing back here in the background. They love to help me with this stuff, which I absolutely love. They've been around this stuff since they were little. I've always kept them around animals and nature. So I absolutely love that they love to help with this stuff. So here in a second, once we get poured in, I think we end up using 3 or 4 bags of this stuff. I'm about to pick up this dirt and explain that it's more sandy, which is really good because we want a sandy dirt because it won't hold humidity and it will drain well. The reason it's important that it doesn't hold humidity is because these guys come from a more arid region. And so if it held a lot of humidity, it could end up making our tortoise sick. And obviously that's not something that we want to have happen. So by doing the sandy dirt, it just doesn't hold that humidity the same, but it does drain very, very well. Okay, y'all enjoy a quick little time lapse of us putting in the rest of the dirt. Okay, you can see here we start carrying over this piece of wood. Now once I put this in here, I kind of stop and look at it for a second to see if that's where I want it. And then obviously once I decide it is, I go ahead and start trying to bury it down in the dirt. I'm doing this for multiple reasons. The first one is we've got to get the tallest part of that wood down below the top of the enclosure so that we can get the enclosure lids to shut flush. But then also I've already thought about how Tookie's going to climb on this. And when she does, she may notice how close she is to the top of the enclosure. And if she decides to stick her head through the bars of the top of the enclosure, she could definitely get her head stuck, and that would not be good at all. And those are the kind of things I'm trying to think about and look for when I build anything or do anything new for my animals. I'm constantly trying to think ahead and think about the things that could become problems or hazards to my animals. That way we can, keep as many things from happening as possible that wouldn't be good. Now, here I'm kind of burying this log down in the dirt and trying to just smooth the dirt back out. And now I kind of sit back here and I'm looking at the situation to see if I like how it looks or if I want to do more before I start working on the lid. But I decided to start working on shutting the lid. So here we close the lid and you can see that it kind of hits the top of the wood. If you couldn't tell, that's why there's a gap between the enclosure with it closed. And you can see I'm looking at it trying to figure out where I have a problem. So I end up opening this back up and kind of digging this out. And so that's what you see us do here for a good little second. And I'll roll a little quick clip of that, kind of us digging that out until we get it to where we need it, to where we can close the lid again. Okay, so now you can see we're kind of standing there looking now that it's closed. But I decided, to be honest, that I don't really like that piece of wood, so that's why we're opening this back up at this point. So I open all this back up. We're going to end up pulling this out of here and going with a different situation, which is part of this process. You may do something and decide you don't like it, and you want to try something different. And to me, that's why this is part of the fun of building an enclosure and doing things like this, because it's not going to work out the first time you do it, most likely, unless you know exactly what you want. But for me, I just do things until I like the style or I like the way something looks. And so clearly I did not like that. And so we've gone ahead and pulled that out, and we're about to try some different pieces of wood. Okay, so you can see here as my little helper still playing in the dirt that I ask her to move. And then we go ahead and put this new piece of wood in here. And this is basically the process of how this works, you guys, is when we're building this stuff and doing new things, I just put stuff in, move it around, see if I like it, let my brain process. It's just a lot of fun. You know, we're really just trying to build something awesome for our animals and something that's going to enrich their brains and enrich their lives and just make it as natural as possible. So this is all just part of the fun for me, is putting these enclosures together and figuring out how you want them. So clearly you can see in this video that I'm just flipping this thing around, moving it around the enclosure, trying to figure out if I like it or not. And as you can see, I did not like the way that one was working out. So I go ahead and remove it from the situation, and then I end up bringing back over another piece, which is actually one of the pieces we do end up sticking with. So as you can see, same thing, same process. I put it in here, kind of put it down, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, okay, how do we want it? Do we want it kind of tilted, slanted, on top, on bottom? And then once I kind of get it in here how I think we want it, I go ahead and make it a little indentation with it, a little impression, and then we remove it completely. And then me and my helpful, amazing little ladies start digging it out so we can kind of sink it down in the dirt. So here we are getting our hands dirty once again, just having some fun. And once we get that dug out enough that I think it'll sink down in there, we go ahead and put it back in. And then once we get it back in here, we all start kind of burying it with dirt. They kind of start throwing dirt on top, and then at some point I kind of start helping throw dirt back on top as well. And so we just get this buried back in, making it look as natural as possible. And now you can see we've got our next piece of wood, which we do end up using in here. Now here in a second, you're going to see my daughter take over because she's like, Dad, I think I know where I think it would be best. And I love that. So when they get involved and they start telling me they know or they want to do it a certain way, I let them take over because I want them to have the confidence and know that they're capable of doing this as well, and that they don't have to have my help, and their decisions are just as important as mine. So right there, what she was kind of pointing out is she's concerned that it's sticking up above the enclosure top. And I just explained to her that don't worry about it, because we're just going to do the same thing we did with the last one, which is we're going to bury it. And that's what we're doing right there, is digging that impression into the dirt so we know where the edge of that log is at. And then we end up digging that dirt out of there so that we can put that wood piece in there, and it will sit down in the dirt so that it is lower than the enclosure top. So when we close the enclosure, that it won't be a problem. Okay, and now that we've got that dug out, we go ahead and put this piece of wood back in here, but then we realize we don't have it dug out enough. So clearly we pull it back up for a second, and now we're digging a little bit more, clearing out a little more space so that when we put this back down in here, it will sit more flush in the dirt and sit below the enclosure top. So when we close the lid, it will be able to close and not be a problem. And then I'm kind of setting the edge of that piece we're putting in now on the edge of the other piece of wood, so it kind of holds it up, so that when Tookie decides to dig in it, if she wants to kind of use it as a burrow and like a hide, she can dig up under it and be able to get in it and hide. And now that we've got that log where we want it, now we're putting all that dirt back underneath it and around it that we dug up earlier. So now it's going to look like it's more in the ground, and it's going to look more natural. And now what I'm doing is I'm kind of sitting there looking at it, thinking I want to add some more dirt, because I think it would make it sink into the ground a little more, make it look a little more natural, and give Tookie a little more dirt to dig in. And so that's exactly what I do. I go ahead and get another bag of dirt, and as you can see here, I'm pouring in more dirt, and we're going to end up spreading that around just to sink that log a little bit more, just like we did with the other one, so it looks more like it's in the ground and not sitting above the ground. And it just gives Tookie a little more dirt to dig in when we put her in here. Okay, so this is the finished look with the wood in it. You can see the one piece we put in is a little lower than the second piece we put in, and it's more covered with dirt. But the second one is also quite covered with dirt, but it does stick up a little further. This is the finished look as far as the wood goes. And now what we are about to start doing is adding the plants. But first we kind of set them in here to see how we want to put them in here before we actually start taking them out of their pots and burying them in the dirt. Okay, so now as you can see, I'm walking over to go ahead and start placing the first plant in here. So that's what we do for a majority of this part of the video, is we just start taking the plants, putting them in the enclosure, moving them around, just like we were doing with our wood pieces. So I'm not going to sit here and bore you with this long process because it does take a while. So I'm going to speed this video up to where we have most of them in here and you can see how we're kind of going to put them, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so at this point in the video, this is where the plants are going to go in the dirt. Now I'm going to put you on a time lapse and do some music so y'all can watch these get put in. I unfortunately didn't think when we did this to show y'all what kind of plants these were, but I can assure you I did research and all of these are safe for the tortoises to eat. Okay, so this is a picture of it completely done. Like in the video where I said about that second log, when we added that second log, you can see how there's space between the log and the dirt in case Tookie wants to dig under there and use that as a hide. And then the other thing we did is we put rocks around the water bowl so that it helps keep dirt from tracking in and out of the water bowl, because if you just had dirt, then it would just get so much dirt in there when Tookie gets in and out of it. But this is one of the couple of pictures I'm going to put of this completely finished. And as you saw in the video, we watered it and everything when we're done. I think it looks really, really good. Okay, so this is the second and last picture before we get Tookie put in. But in that first picture, we had this front part open along with that left side where the water bowl is at. This one was just a different perspective with just the front open. Again, I'm just really happy with the way this turned out. I think it looks so good. Let's get Tookie put in. Okay, everybody, this is where we introduce Tookie to her new home. Now, unfortunately, I didn't think to put it on a time lapse afterwards, showing her investigating her new home, but I will get better about that as we go along. I was brand new at the time, and I didn't think to do that. But anyway, we're going to have the girls set her in her water bowl so she knows where it's at. Now, other than a few short little videos at the end of Tookie eating a dandelion flower and some mulberry leaves, this is the end of the video. So y'all please like this video, subscribe, turn on your notification bells, and also please comment down below. I love y'all's interaction. Y'all have a great rest of your weekend and a great upcoming week. And stay tuned for next week when we start working on building Tookie's big enclosure.
Wild Media, wildly imaginative little duo.